Hi everyone, and welcome to Fan Commentary on Green with Evil Part 2. Now, I'm torn on this episode personally because for the show, this was a key crowning moment for Jason where, they finally got to use him because he wasn't really all that focused on, before and honestly after, except for the Green Candle, he's one of the least developed out of the original five. Now, for the other reason why I particularly don't care for the episode as much is editorially, because, like I said in the previous episode, this episode suffered the most from having not much material they can use in from Jew Ranger. So they had to come up with something in order to get a story going, and it didn't really work too well on the Sentai and the other Rangers material. But for Jason's side, it's very well done. At the beginning, Jason really didn't get much to do. He was just your standard generic leader who, for that job he did well, but he really didn't have a personality at the point until this episode where we finally showed why he's the leader. And I really wish they had gone on more with Jason because he's the weakest Wood Ranger in the early years, I would say, because they just didn't really get him to do much. And I think that was really a fault of the Jew Ranger episodes because they didn't really give Geki a lot of stuff to do either. He had the whole brother thing, which gave Jason stuff to do in later episodes with Tommy. I always like this moment where about Alpha comes back. It is a little bit of a cheat because the episode does fill with a lot of, things that they could have changed where they could have focused on repairing Alpha for a little bit longer to fill in those dead spots or, in this case, reuse the footage. Everyone is familiar with a lot of these shots being reused throughout the show over and over again, especially this scene because this was used in the earlier, like around the Bones episodes and a few episodes later where she's like first, talking. They love using this shot over again. Now, this shot was also reused in From Happy Birthday Zach, and this guy was supposed to be Zordon when he was human, I assume, thousands of years ago, which, of course, that's actually Goshi from Jew Rangers from the Nasty Night episode. I mean, they needed the scene because they needed to set up the Sword of Darkness. Now, there is a nitpick I always never particularly liked about this episode. Now, the whole thing about the Sword of Darkness is that it's used to keep him locked as an evil Green Ranger because I'm assuming the power coin itself is not inherently evil, so over time the spell would wear out, and for her to keep him permanent was the sword. The thing is, she does this test with Tommy in order for him to earn the sword, but if he doesn't earn the sword, he's going to lose the spell. Why would you do that? Now, this is the only scene with Bulk and Skull, and, it's kind of convenient because somehow they only come in now when he could have easily been caught while he was looking at Rita. But another nitpick is that, Bulk and Skull, they do deserve this because they are jerks in the series, especially in the first season. But it's just like they never bring up this whole glowy eye thing, the energy that goes on their boots, and they get thrown into the thing. It's like they never bring it up again. It's like you think they would have mentioned it or something, or maybe put two and two together in future episodes, and they may have thought he was a ranger. It's just so bizarre when it comes to Bandai when, the Green Ranger became so popular. It was bizarre that they never released the Gold Power Morpher in the original MMPR line. It was released in Jew Ranger, and it was a really nice set in back in the day, but I never understood that logic why they skipped it. I think a lot of people like the Jason episodes because it's showing him more emotional, personal level where it's like I want to defend it. You know, I was violated, and my friend Zordon is gone. Well, I also noticed that Jason was going to actually have a couple of extra lines in that shot. Also, if you pay attention to that doodad that Billy is using, he's actually has NES controller port plugged into it. So they take a lot of components from various toys and old hardware from video game consoles that are, you know, throughout the years. I remember there was a wireless NES controller hardware piece that was used in, I think, at the second half of season one where it was painted blue. What's interesting about MMPR season one is that they really didn't have a lot of stuff set up where we know, okay, we have these limits on the show and what they can show and do, and then this is fine to show. So when like Tommy is mean to Kim, it kind of went pretty far as they can go. Very unusual for PR, ever since, because there's certain things that PR doesn't do anymore. This is a little too far, uncomfortable, but that's what I like about the scene. It shows evil Tommy being, very, as close as possible as bad. Even though he did this test of strength when he was first picked as the Green Ranger. And this is where the writing doesn't really work. And they were lucky they had other footage material they can use, although the footage that we see in what's coming up when they're on the planet is actually from another episode. And if you pay attention closely, you can see Babu is using a flute and playing music. This is from something completely different. Now, for the fight itself, it's a decent fight. Jason David Frank never disappoints. Even the stunt performers for the putties, they never disappoint in these type of little things. I just wish it had a more better context into the story rather than this. Maybe if they had made the putty stronger. This shot is actually from the Jew 1.5 footage. Everyone knows that in season two they were shooting additional material for MMPR because before they thought of switching over to Die Ranger they were shooting all this extra stuff. But before then they actually shot some stuff with Machika Soga and a few of the other actors in Japan to shoot these few things where they loosely said something in English. That's why the lip syncing kind of works. It doesn't work all the time, but that was one example of this. And later on in season one, Scorpina has the same thing. That was also Jew 1.5. Basically, any of that gray background is material that, for us, that prop was actually pretty well done. For the most part, the props on MMPR in the first season weren't really good, but that one was pretty well. It's not perfect. It's a little bit shorter than the actual Japanese prop of the Sword of Darkness. I do like this scene because, for the most part, before and after, honestly, that the Rangers never get screwed in school, where either they get exposed as Rangers or a monster attacks them specifically where their identity is found out, which I really wish they had done that type of story and just erase people's memories but still pull off the story. But this way it shows that Tommy went into their safe space and zapped Jason away, which I thought was actually good logic, because from this point we have to assume the original teleporting powers come from the power coins, and then Zordon adapted it into his systems. Now, the Dark Dimension is US made. This was never featured in Jew Ranger at all. For what they did with it was very interesting. It's a very simple set. There's almost nothing to it. It's probably a reuse of the Command Center's star background and a few other things from movies. But they needed to figure out a way to come up with something they could do, because they couldn't film in Power Rangers costumes yet, but they did have the Goldar costumes, so they had to come up with some idea. I always hated that the Power Morpher in Season 1 never had the black lightning bolts on the side put on, but at least in this case they left it the same way as in the Morph sequence, so it's in continuity, but it's never right. Now, that is actually the original toy from Bandai America. And if you pay attention throughout the scenes of the Power Morpher showing up, there's a couple of shots where the sticker is actually incorrectly placed, because I think when they purchased the US Power Morpher, it was placed originally upside down with the stickers, and they incorrectly did that on one shot. So I'm not sure why it has two different Power Morphers used. Possibly they might have broken it during filming, so they had to use another one and hastily put on the sticker without realizing it was upside down. I wouldn't call it cold shoulder. I mean, he was really mean to her, and Kim really didn't do anything. So it's very suspicious on what he did. I always never understood why he was doing that in context taste, because it's just like that means he morphed and was fooling around with the sword of darkness for no real reason, because like this also probably made Goldar a fan favorite for people, because in the beginning, Goldar was just your simple bad guy, and he said, a little bit of lines here and there. But this episode really showed who he really was, which was, commanding presence, very evil, but not in the traditional "I'm evil, I will kill you" kind of way. It was more subtle, and that's what I really liked about the Goldar character, which is why I got very mad when they ruined him in season 3, and to a degree season 2, with Zed constantly putting him down. Now, this is something that Power Rangers has never done ever since. Holding someone up from their neck. That's something that's probably off limits normally, but I have a feeling, because they shot these early episodes before they had re-edited them due to the whole controversy with Mortal Kombat and how kids shows had a lot of violence, which I lived around that time period as a kid. I saw nothing wrong with the way they did it. I, even till today, if I'm seeing it as an adult myself, I would say that's perfectly fine to see as a kid's show. It's intense, but you want to have some intensity with a kid's show. Now, this is the reason why the whole Jason scene was, written in, because this is the only little bit of Jew Ranger footage they could have used where Geki was just missing from this episode because he was dealing with other things. This, unfortunately, is also awkwardly edited because there's a lot of stuff that just does not make any sense in MMPR's context. In the Jew Ranger episode where this footage is taken from, it makes perfect sense. So if you were confused on what happens with the Megazord later on, I highly suggest watch Jew Ranger for at least that episode and you'll understand why that scene happened. If you think about it, they're calling the Zords, and Tommy is not giant, there's not a giant monster, there's nothing. They're just calling the Zords, and they're escalating a fight. They are breaking Zordon's rule here. And it doesn't make any sense, especially later on, which I got really annoyed at when the Megazord comes in. Also, this does confirm that they can automatically operate Zords without the Rangers present because the T-Rex comes in. Now, the reason why we never see Kim's shot calling the Dinozords, unfortunately, until way later in Season 1, is because they always reuse the shots from, I think, Episode 4 of Jew Ranger, when they're from the Legendary Weapons episode, and they could not use that footage because there was a Japanese kid behind her, so they always cut it out. This I hated even when I didn't even understand Jew Ranger Japanese footage and stuff, because basically they formed the Megazord for no reason whatsoever. In Jew Ranger it makes more sense, and what's even worse is that they have this material where you see the Megazord moving his hands, doing these gestures. There's no dialogue. It's extremely awkward. They should have put something here, like, I don't know, Zach talking over it or something, because in Jew Ranger Daijujin, the Megazord is alive and he speaks, and that's what's going on in that scene. So this is probably an example of where the whole we don't know what to do with the Green Ranger character, or this is like they were just really stuck with the limited footage, where the episode unfortunately suffers, because they were probably like, we need to come up with 5 episodes, a 5-parter, and we literally have only footage for maybe 3 parts, because even part 5 kind of suffers from this issue later on. Unfortunately, Zordon doesn't actually say any important information besides his location and space time. Oh, if you look closely, you can see that the Power Rangers stickers are the wrong way. I still think the Power Morpher is probably one of the best designs Morpher's done on the show, because it's so versatile in its coin system, where you can do so many different things with it, which they have done over the years, where they came up with the Master Morpher. Fans have come up with some really cool ideas with it. Just because it has that simple coin system, which was a really brilliant idea, and it's, it has that, that flair of ancient, dinosaur. That's what they were going for in Jew Ranger. And it's a unique design because we rarely have, like, morphers that are not attached to the wrists. It's not common. And for a buckle morpher, that's even more rare. And I wish they would bring that idea back again and use it in a different way.